Today on the show, we're honored to welcome Armida Espinosa, a retired bilingual teacher, a proud first generation Mexican American, and author of the heartfelt children's book Brave Losa Learns English. Armida's story is deeply personal and powerfully universal, reflecting the emotional and academic journey of millions of English language learners across the country. Through the eyes of Lois, her young protagonist, Amita brings to life the fears, insecurities, and triumphs that come from learning a new language and finding your voice. She's here to share her journey, her inspiration, and the techniques she hopes to empower second language learners to embrace their inner strength. Armida lives in Fresno, California with her husband Leonard,
Leonard.
and their three Fury champions, Luna, Soul, and Cutie Boy. Welcome to the show, Armida.
Thank you for having me, Keith. It's a pleasure.
So good to have you on. I'm not sure why your husband's name was a tongue twister, but this morning it was.
It was a tongue twister for my mother who didn't speak English.
I bet, yeah. But some of the names we come up with in America are somewhat challenging.
They are.
So I'm going to ask you my favorite question. What's the best piece of advice you ever received?
To be authentic
Mm.
myself. Did I follow that rule? No, I didn't. I finally, now in my 60s, I'm like, okay, I get it. Important to be yourself. Be authentic.
It's hard to do that because there's so much pressure to conform to what other people want you to be that it's just hard to kind of sit in your own self. Because if you're not yourself, and if someone doesn't like you can say, well, that wasn't really me. They didn't
Exactly.
like the person I was pretending to be that day.
Good point. Good point. But you're right. Yes, I think as wisdom, with age comes wisdom, and do you see the advice that you receive with different eyes, through a different lens?
I think as you get older too, you just care a lot less what people think, which also helps.
I like that.
The older I get, the less I care what you think about me.
That
I'm curious, as you think about your journey and your life, are there people in your life who served as an inspiration or a mentor for you on your journey?
Yes, and looking back, talking about being authentic and being ourselves, the two inspirational people that just, of course, were dear to my heart are my parents, because I look back at their life and how they lived it, and they were certainly authentic. They lived their lives, and like you said, what other people thought about them, it really didn't take center stage as much as just being themselves and moving through life in that fashion.
I love that. So tell us a bit about your journey from first generation Mexican American, how it shaped your career as a bilingual teacher.
Yes, it's been an interesting journey. My parents were from Mexico. They have both passed away now. So I was first generation. And I'll be honest with you, going into school was a challenge because although I was the youngest of six, so I had siblings that by the time I went into kindergarten, I spoke quite a bit of English. It might not have been high academic level, but I certainly had a good foundation of English skills. But once I got into school and all the academics started hitting me, it really took a toll on me to really, talking about how we allow people's perceptions of ourselves impact how we think about ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what happened with me. That's exactly what happened.
So one of our ministries here in Iowa have a Hispanic pastor who's doing ESL classes as a way for our churches to connect with their community. And he talks about, how difficult it is sometimes to get those going and how hard it is for I think people who don't speak the language to understand the difficulty of doing that. I'm just curious, I've taken as a pastor, I had to learn to do Greek and Hebrew. And that was hard to try to learn a second language because I'm always trying in my head to translate it into English as opposed to,
Yes.
just taking what it was and living with it. It was always like, what does this mean in English? And I'm curious for you, as you're trying to do that as a ESL teacher, person who's bilingual, what are some of the challenges that we don't even imagine in learning a new language in a new country?
Well, I think what happens is because they say if you have a second language, your mind is working double, right? I mean, it's switching back and forth between the two languages without a, I mean, it would be logical that when you hear something in a different language, right away you go to the language that you do know and you try to make the connection, right? That's
Right.
like that happens, and really that's what we're supposed to be doing in learning a second language, go to the language that you have and try to figure out and understand the message or what you're trying to learn. So that was the same thing for me, but I think what happened for me was well, not what I think what happens for me. What happened to me was a negative voice started talking to me, my inner voice, and I started paying attention to it out of fear and out of not I really took comfort in that little voice that was talking to me and not giving me the best advice, although at the time, it seemed like pretty good advice.
Do you feel awfully lonely when you're trying to do this? Because if your parents maybe weren't native speakers, it's probably hard for them to help you process this. So you're kind of doing this on your own as you're kind of making that transition.
Yes, exactly, and that's what I did, and it's kind of interesting in the fact that I had older siblings, 5 older siblings. I never asked them how they moved through their educational I never did. I kept it to myself, and, of course, we didn't have books at our home. My parents didn't speak English, so they really couldn't help, and so I really just felt like I was on my own to just figure it out, and like I said, I had a little voice in the back of my head that was guiding me, and I was listening to it, and I just thought, "This is normal." I assumed this was normal.
Right. So tell us about your book. What inspired you to write your book? And tell us the title of it again, because I'm sure I murdered the name of the person in your book.
Yes, the title is Brave Lollies Learns English, Lollies. And Lollies is an abbreviation of Dolores, which is my mom's name. So it's in honor of my mother. But this story, I went into education and I retired as a teacher and I had always loved to write. So I had always written stories, children's stories, but I had only written them for myself. The only person that I would let read my stories was my husband because he was a safe space, right? And so I assumed, I just figured when I retire, I'm going to just hide away in my little cocoon and just write my little heart away and I'm good. But it was during COVID, and it never occurred to me, but the thought did at that time to take a children's writing class. So I thought, why not invest in myself, right? And so I took a class, and they encouraged me to self-publish a story. And this story, I was meditating one day, and this experience that I had in first grade kept popping up. And I really thought I had left that behind 69 years ago, 64 years ago. But the experience kept popping up, and I just thought to myself, "Oh my goodness." I just assumed I had gotten over it. The story came to life, and the story was if you would like me to go into the story a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead. I'd love to hear the
This
backdrop.
Yeah, the story was first day of school, 1st grade, new school, new teacher, so I don't know any students there. We had just moved into a new housing development, and the teacher pulls me back to the back of the room, and she's testing me on my ABCs. Kindergarten teachers, first grade teachers, we all do that. I get stuck at G. Now, I don't know if I'm thinking I think knew my ABCs, but I think I just got nervous. You know how you say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then there's like
Right.
a moment, and I just didn't know what came after that. I just got stuck. And the longer the time lapsed, the more nervous I got. And so eventually the teacher allowed me to go back to my desk. The embarrassment and the shame that I felt at that moment because the teacher was writing something on her pad, and I just thought, this is not good. Now she knows I'm not smart. All the other students, they all were smiling and they all seemed to be having a good time. And I just figured, I'm the only one that doesn't know my ABCs and I need to figure it out fast.
Wow. So this book was kind of a reflection of that story for you. Who are you writing to, and what do you hope when they pick up this book, they understand about the journey that you went through and other second language speakers are endearing as well?
Yes, I like this message. The message is that we all go through this, not only second language learners, but when we're lifelong learners. And whenever you're learning something new, that little voice is going to pop up in all of us that The minute it becomes challenging, that voice is going to tell us, this is perhaps something that you will never learn. So you need to just move on to something else, right? I mean, because it's that negative voice that just sets in and it just repeats itself over the more challenging the more of a challenge it is to learn what we're learning, the louder that little voice gets. So my message is that we all have that negative little voice. We don't have to let it consume us. We don't have to listen to it. Yes, it's there, but we can switch our thinking from a negative thought to a positive thought, something as simple as learning addition is easy and fun, just so that we could change that voice, that message that we're getting, so that we could continue to push through the challenge and learn what we're needing to learn.
I'm curious, as a teacher who's going to maybe have all of a sudden for the first time in their class, someone whose English is not their first language, what are some tips that you would have for teachers who go, I'm not sure what to do, how to do this, how not to alienate people, how not to put the experience that you've experienced on a new child coming into her class or her.
So teachers can easily pair children up with other children who have a similar language for support. And just by the fact that the teacher, because all of my teachers are very supportive all along the way, and I will say I didn't experience anything negative from any of my teachers. But what was louder in my voice was my negative voice, my self-talk. That was the loudest thing, and I listened to it through high school. It's not good. But in any event, for teachers, they can pair children up with other children who have a similar language for support and just give them time to process. If a child is not raising their hand with an answer right away, it doesn't mean that they're not understanding. It just means that it's taking them some time to process and to get comfortable with the environment, get comfortable with the language, because children, nobody wants to put themselves out there in an embarrassing situation. So they're going to hold back. So let's give them that space.
So I'm curious, as you think about your journey, what was the emotional toll that you talk a little bit about how it impacted you for such a long time? How did you deal with that emotional toll as you're kind of learning to go through education system? Because you became a teacher, so obviously you wanted to go back and do that for someone else. So how did you navigate all of that?
Well, I got to tell you, Keith, in all honesty, I did not do well. I mean, in that first grade, the little voice got the best of me. So by the second grade, I was academically behind, didn't know what else to do. Because the longer I went to school, each year, I got academically further and further behind. My confidence became lower and lower. My anxieties, my fears, my embarrassment to confront or to share out with anybody that I didn't know what I was doing, that I needed help. It never occurred to me to take that leap of faith and just ask for help. I just thought I was creating a little cocoon where I was safe and and I gotta admit, did I cheat? I cheated. I cheated a lot in school because it was a survival skill for me, which of course then adds to the guilt and the shame, right? Because
Right.
you know you're not supposed to be cheating, but I don't know what else to do, but I know I need to get through it. So by the time I graduated from high school, I was reading probably at about a third or fourth grade level. I was pretty academically very, very low. And it wasn't until I married in my early 20s that I was very fortunate to have met my husband in high school. He was fourth generation, a big difference. He had a vision. He knew he was going to go graduate from high school, go to college, become a teacher, get his doctorate. I mean, he had his whole life planned. I was just trying to get through high school, just doing my best to get through high school and never thought that I would ever go to college because I just assumed, why would I continue to put myself in that predicament after 12 years of that embarrassing and shame that I went through? But what I saw in him was when he was going to college, I saw him and his buddies getting together and helping each other. Right, they were rewriting their term papers and typing their term papers and correcting their grammar. It occurred to me I had never asked for help. And I realized that I myself had created such a world of my own little safety world that I had damaged or hurt myself, right, academically. And it was then that I thought, wow, if I ask for help, maybe I could learn. And so I started at the community college, and my husband helped me a lot. I asked for a lot of help from the professors, teachers, my husband, and I started changing my mindset.
So you mentioned earlier in our discussion about the inner voice that was telling you that you weren't ready, that you weren't smart, that you need to cheat. So what techniques do you suggest to people who are second language learners to quiet the inner voice, or at least to maybe tame it? You may not be able to quiet it, but how do you tame that inner voice?
Yes. So first of all, just acknowledging that we all have that voice that pops up whenever we're learning something new. And this is a conversation that teachers could have, which would be so impactful for all their children, not just second language learners, but even just English only students. Letting them know that if you're trying to learn a math addition and you have this little voice, because we hear children say to ourselves, I can never learn. I can't learn this. This is too hard. I mean, they're verbalizing the I can'ts. That's a perfect time for a teacher to have a conversation with the child and say, look, I too, when I'm trying to learn something new, and it's hard, I have a little voice in my head that tells me I can't learn it. I said, but I have to just quiet that voice and I have to change what I tell myself. I have to tell myself that learning math is easy and fun. Just that little switch so that we could continue to stay focused and push through. But having that conversation with children that I too, as an adult, always have that voice and what I do to change it so that I could push through. Just that simple conversation is so powerful with all of our children.
I always think book titles are so critical, and you have the title Brave. So describe to me when you thought about that term brave, 'cause you could have picked a bunch of words to kind of put in your title. What does bravery mean in the context of second language learners?
So bravery in the context of second language learners or for anybody that's learning anything that is challenging is just to have the to be brave enough to have the courage to know that yes, I don't know this yet, but it doesn't mean I can't learn it. And yes, I have that little voice that's popping up that's saying I'm not going to be able to learn it, but guess what? I don't have to listen to it. I can be brave enough to switch my thinking and keep moving forward because eventually I will learn it. It's just going to take a little longer. So just that little conversations with ourselves.
That is so critical. So is there other books in the works for you, or is this like a series of books on this, or what's next?
Well, I did do a second book. It's called Brave Loli's and Her Box of Hope. And it's Loli's, of course, the character finding her voice and being able to support her community because it's around the earth the hurricane that hit Puerto Rico in 2017 and how she finds her voice and organizes her community to support Puerto Rico. That's the second book that came out in 23. And I have a third book that's coming out probably in January or February, but it is a completely different story and it's not part of the sequel.
So as you say, you self-published your first book. What was the most challenging part for those who are thinking, "Yeah, I want to write a book," and especially in the children's space? What was some of the things you had to overcome?
Well, I was very fortunate when I took that one class through on writing for children. I ended up signing up with a program. It's a hybrid publisher out of Canada, and they help you publish your own book. So you own all the rights. So I got to tell you, they were a blessing because I learned they took us through all the steps and they have helped publish all three of my books. I'm not tech savvy, so I understand my limitations. I could write a story and with the help of their editors, I could really make it a good strong story, but all of the other pieces behind that, there is a lot. I could take a lifetime to have learned, or I was fortunate to be in a position to be able to pay for the program and have them do all the stuff on the background.
Yeah, because I mean, with the kids' books, you have to have illustrators and typeset. All that was kind of. I'm sure that's. I just did a book, but I didn't have any illustrations in it because I'm like, that's a whole nother level of production there.
Yes, it is, and so they guided me, and what was really good about that program was it had a tight timeline. So it kept me on track because otherwise I could easily procrastinate and still not have gotten a book out as of right now. But they keep me on a timeline and they guide me through everything. And aside from the illustration illustrator that I had to find on my own, they provided all the other logistical pieces to self-publishing a book. And so I was very fortunate that Brave Lollies has sold over 9,000 books in 2.5 years, and so I'm very proud of that.
So how long did it take you to write the book? Just out of curiosity.
So the minute that when I was meditating and that experience came up, it took me a day or 2 to write the bones of the story and share it with the editor, and it probably took about 2 months to really nail it and really clean it up with their guidance, and then it took about 9 months to do all the other pieces, the finding the illustrator, giving the illustrator time to do the illustrations, which took about 3 months. So it's a long process, it's not something that happens overnight, but within a year, the first book was published.
What kind of feedback are you getting on your book?
Getting really good feedback. As a retired educator, both my husband and I here in the San Joaquin Valley, over our course of our career, we've had an opportunity to have met and learned, worked with a lot of districts and administrators. And so that has really opened the doors for me because of the relationships that we've built throughout the course of our career. And so, yes, I work with a lot of the big districts here in the Valley. And so now I'm trying to push myself out of the Valley, out of the Central Valley, but it's gotten very good responses here in the Valley.
So here's your chance to pitch to educators. Why should they buy your book?
So the reason I should buy the book. I mean, and the message is just helping children with that negative voice that we all have. So, and as I said, even though Loli's was the title was Brave Loli's Learns English, it really was just because we are all learning English when we're out in kindergarten, right? It's not just whether you're a second language learner or just an English learner, you're still learning English. So
Right.
it really is applicable to all children in whatever they're learning, whatever it is that they're learning.
That's great. Look, great message. So I love to ask my guests this question. What do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy, I would love my legacy to be that somehow I left the world just a little bit better than when I first got here.
So in season 6 of the podcast, we're doing something a little different. We're going to have a surprise question. Pick a number between 1 and 4 for your surprise question.
Okay, I'll take 4.
All right. What things do you do every day that you wish you could automate?
That I wish I could automate. Okay, that's a good question. It's still a challenge, but I would love to be able to automate that it comes on an automatic for me is positive talk,
Oh, okay.
positive self-talk, because that negative talk still pops up on a regular basis. So if I could have positive self-talk constantly generated throughout the day, I think I could do pretty good.
Yeah, you could sell that too. You just get a button that everybody could push so that would just automatically positive talk your day through. Yeah. So if you invent that, you let me know and come back on the podcast and we'll talk about how your positive talk button.
So I got to tell you, I made these bracelets, and it says, "What are you thinking?" Because we're bombarded with thoughts throughout the day, millions of thoughts throughout the day, and a lot of times we just move through the day and we don't give much thought to those thoughts that are just in the background. So whenever I look down at my bracelet, I take a second and I ask, "What am I thinking at this very moment?" If the thought is a negative thought, I switch it to a positive thought and then I move on. So it keeps me alert to constantly check in with myself on what am I thinking.
That's a good one. I like that. Too. So where can people find your bracelet?
Well, I gotta say, I give them away whenever I do presentations,
Okay.
but folks can just, you could get online and you could just, I never thought about marketing them, but you could certainly just buy them from whoever makes they're little plastic bracelets, right?
Right.
Or you could even make a little bracelet with, you know how you go into art stores and they have the little letters where you could write your put your name
Yeah,
together? You could just get a string and write, "What are you thinking?" and put that on there, right?
there you go. Where can people find your books and connect with you on social media?
Yes, so Armida Espinosa, author on Facebook, and my book sells on Barnes& and Noble or armidaespinosa.com. The book is on Amazon, of course, and so, yes.
Thank you. I mean, as we wrap up this conversation, what key takeaways do you want to leave with the audience who listened to us today?
The takeaway is that don't underestimate the thoughts that are running through our head that we're not paying attention to. They're impacting us. We need to be mindful of our thoughts because if we're not mindful of our thoughts, we're losing out on life.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for what you do for raising awareness of what it means to be a second language person and the bravery it takes to take on the challenge of learning a new language and navigating through the education system. And I'm sure this book will inspire a lot of kids who are doing negative self-talk about trying to navigate this. I mean, because it is a brave process to take on something new and to try to learn content in a second language. So I
Yes.
commend anybody who's trying to do that. So thank you for raising that awareness for us.
Thank you for having me, Keith. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.